Hello and welcome to the KPI Institute's webinar Performance Management and Supplier Relationship. My name is Andrei Kostea and I will be your host for today along with our presenter Cristina Blioca. This webinar is part of a series of free educational materials that aim to enhance the knowledge and know-how of those interested while also creating a bridge between us as a company and you, our public. The KPI Institute is a research organization specialized in business performance. It operates research programs in 12 practice domains, each linked to a certification course, ranging from strategy and KPIs to employee performance and from customer service to innovation performance. The KPI Institute continuously builds on its values of best know-how, data and facts and common sense to achieve its mission of integrating performance as a discipline through research, publications, and, what interests us today, through educational programs such as this webinar. Today, 12 years after the KPI Institute was created, we can proudly say that our products have reached professionals in 5 continents, and that our public comprises a worldwide community of 73,000 members online and 28,000 registered companies on smartkpis.com. Today's webinar focuses on acknowledging the importance of the performance management system in supplier relationships, and it will be delivered by Cristina Blioca, a supply chain management subject matter expert with over 14 years of experience in automotive and FMCG companies. Her activities range from creating and growing procurement departments, as she managed departments within and with different maturity levels, to managing the accelerated growth periods in various companies. Cristina has a high level of experience regarding supply chain management, optimization of material flow, warehousing, inventory management, transportation, and distribution. This presentation will last between 30 to 40 minutes. Please feel free to ask any questions you might have during the webinar, as they will be answered at the end of the presentation in our Q&A session. Enjoy the KPI Institute's webinar, Performance Management and Supplier Relationship. Now, I would like to invite Cristina to begin her presentation.
Thank you, Andrei. Hello, everybody. I'm Cristina, and I will be the host of today's webinar. First of all, let me all thank you for the interest shown in this webinar, Performance Management in Supplier Relationship. The elements that we will approach today are part of a more complex educational program that the KPI Institute is offering at international level, the Certified Supplier Performance Professional. This educational program is aimed to improve your skills in managing supplier and supplier performance and help you develop a more strategic approach on performance in procurement activities. As said earlier by Andrei, during this webinar today we will just have an insight of some key elements, and we'll focus on the importance of supplier management system in a company. So let's go through the main topics that we'll cover in our agenda today. We will start with the topic of motivation for improving supplier performance. Why should we ever even consider improving supplier performance? Then we'll have some examples of cost of poor supplier performance. We'll continue with performance in the procurement life cycle to identify which levels in the procurement life cycle we can improve our performance. We discuss some key tools and actions that can be used in supplier performance management, and afterwards we'll see about the benefits of implementing supplier performance system. And at the end, we'll have a session of Q&A when we can answer questions that rose up during the webinar. So let's start with, so the learning points of this webinar would be to understand the impact of our actions in each stage of the procurement life cycle, acknowledge of the importance of supplier performance in supporting our organization, its competitive advantages, get familiar with the main tools used in framing, monitoring, and improving supplier performance, and get valuable insights on how to implement and manage supplier performance management systems. So this would be the objectives of today's webinar. So now let's start with the first topic. The first topic today will be the one regarding motivation for improving supplier performance. Why should we actually do it? Development in actual business environment is more difficult to anticipate due to globalization and due to globalization of demand and supply. And there are the result of it is that supplier management has become more important and strategic, and supply chain management is getting more important for the organizations. There are two key factors that actually influence supply chain management. The supply chain, it's influenced by the complexity done by, delivered by shorter product life cycles, increased outsourcing of key activities along the supply chain, and the uncertainty and the risk, because we have more demanding consumers, huge demand variation, and even social, political instability or natural disaster. So having these two key factors in mind, we have to approach supplier performance management elements in order to manage better the cooperation throughout the supply chain to reduce the risk and the uncertainty of suppliers who will not comply with the industry standards. And in doing so, I would like to start with an example in the case study, and I would like to discuss a little bit the example of Boeing in the construction and development of one of its products. So what happened at Boeing, they had a new approach in developing a new product, and their intention was to build a new product which is highly innovative, and wanted to do this in a very short period of time, and also with a lower cost. So the focus was on cost and on time. And what they did, what they thought to be a good case to do so, was to outsource most of these activities. So they went up to 70% outsourcing of activities in order to achieve their goals. The result was actually quite another, because they didn't achieve their goals, but instead they had huge loss. They spent much more money that they was expecting, and billions of dollars more over budget, and a delay of over 3 years in realizing and achieve their goal. So what actually was the problem was that in the moment that they started the outsourcing process, they lacked the coordination of the suppliers that they had outsourced their project. And they had a huge problem in the end with the results. The parts were not fitting. So supplier management coordination was outsourced somehow in their perception also, which led to huge falls in product delivery. So this was one of the biggest, one of the mistakes that they made that had this outcome. The other big problem was the innovation risk. They actually wanted to make a lot of innovations and to develop a lot of new things in order to assure customers, increase their customer satisfaction. But they did not try to imply and introduce the supplier in developing these new projects and this innovation. Instead, they just sent everything over to the subcontractors in order to do it. So two of the main elements of the supplier relationship management that were actually not taken into the consideration and were not helping in developing the problem as they actually wanted it to be. So it was the coordination, lack of the coordination, and the lack of innovation. What was the outcome? They had to send a lot of their engineers over to the subcontractor side and to implement a supplier relationship management system in order to be able to deliver the products that they had in mind. On the other hand, or another perspective, to see about the importance of supplier performance management system is when we talk about it regarding to the competitive advantage of our companies. The competitive advantage, this advantage over the competitors that one organization has, it can be gained either by offering consumer greater value through lower prices or through better services that they have. But the competitive advantage can be, it has many drivers, and one of this is like management system, the business model can be a driver, the business process, innovation, human capital. And very important for our case, strategic alliances, partnership with the supplier is a very important driver in order to achieve a competitive advantage. So if companies want to maintain and consolidate a competitive advantage, they should try to link the activities that generate innovation. They should try to link these activities in their companies with the one of the supplier companies in order to have the results that they desire. So that will be the important part about why how we should acknowledge the importance of supplier performance management system. Let us talk a little bit now about the cost of poor supplier performance. What actually does it mean? What is supplier performance? We refer to supplier performance as the ability for suppliers to comply or exceed in their obligations with industry standards. Might be the international quality industry standards like ISO, like C1 or ACC, or consumer general or procurement policies, guidelines that we have in our organization, code of conduct, supplier guidelines, or responsible sourcing policies, which is very common used in supplier relationship management, or specific contract requirements related to product, service, quality, warranty claims, or delivery issues. So if a supplier is performing well, they might then we consider that they achieve the obligations in delivering the solutions that we expect from them. So how can we actually measure the cost of poor supplier performance? If we just stick to the agreement or the contract agreements that we have to our suppliers, then we will simply add up some costs that arise in a moment when our suppliers do not perform well, like quality cost in case that we have defective parts that we have to be reworked, quality checks or that are stopping or slowing our production sites, delivery costs for additional processing, service deficiency cost, or downtime due to insufficient delayed support or customer-facing costs. These are just some examples. We can very easily add up these sums and see how much it costs when our suppliers do not perform. What is very important is that the end result, it's not only about the cost, it's about the customer satisfaction, which has a huge impact on our organization. So what we have to keep in mind when we think about cost of poor supplier performance, we have to think about the fact that supplier performance, which is poor, is going to lead us to lose our customer. They will just take their business elsewhere if we cannot provide what we actually promised to deliver. And we have two examples here, very concrete examples about what it means when suppliers do not perform at the agreed standards. One would be the example of Ford, which had to recall 13 million tires from the market because they had the design and quality glitches in the tires, and that ended up in a cost of $3 billion. And Coca-Cola, for example, they had a huge problem in one of the biggest of the European markets when they had to recall about 15 million cans of Coca-Cola due to contaminated chemicals that were used after some of their consumers fell ill. The cost of poor supplier was about $60 million. So we have just some raw example about what it means and how costly it can be if our supplier do not perform and what the impact is on our daily activities. Now, I would like to talk a little bit and to have an insight about the performance in the procurement life cycle, because supplier relationship management can be also referred to as procurement in daily activities. First of all, let us make clear distinction between performance management and performance measurement system. So the performance management is the discipline that deals with performance. Yes, it's about taking action based on the results of the evaluation to ensure that we achieve our set targets. And this can be done by formulating a plan, by active monitoring of the implementation, readjustment of the plan, and the performance measurement. So, seen like this, the performance measurement system is just a sub-process of the performance management, and uses tracking and the use of KPIs to monitor the performance of our activities. Now, coming back to the procurement process, performance in procurement would be to correlate the procurement process with the business strategy and objectives, focus on supplier performance on the areas of optimization and evaluation, has to perform market assessments to align the customer needs, the market capabilities, and focus again on procurement optimization. This might be the key actions that we can implement in the procurement process in order to achieve performance in our activity. I would like to talk now a little bit about the procurement process and to distinguish actually each steps of the procurement process. We have, it consists of three main parts. We can define it as consisting of three main parts: the planning part, the sourcing, and the management of procurement. In the planning part, in the planning stage, we initiate a project. The assessment need and market analysis is being done. We specify the requirement, and it's very important to define our criteria that we will use in the procurement process when selecting our suppliers. In the sourcing phase, in the sourcing stage, we approach the market and look for opportunities of cooperation with our suppliers, and we go to the selection process of the suppliers that we want to have in our portfolio. And then the last part, or the last stage, would be the one that consists of the management of the procurement, and that would be negotiation and award of the contract, and very important, the contract and relationship management that we actually do with our suppliers. Now the question is, what does it take to improve performance? Where do we actually can improve our performance in the procurement life cycle? And I would like to conduct a short poll to see what your opinion is about this. And I would like to ask you, which stage of the procurement process do you consider important for supplier performance improvement? The planning, the sourcing, or the management phase? So the question will be, which stage of the procurement process do you consider to be important for supplier performance improvement? So Andrei, can you help me conduct this poll? We'll need like 1 minute for everybody to answer.
Yep, I've launched the poll and everyone can vote.
Okay.
All right, can you see the results? Yes.
Okay, maybe you can tell us the results, or even show us on the screen the results of the poll.
Yes, in case they don't appear, 75% voted C, management, and 25% voted B, sourcing.
Okay, so the procurement process, they find the stages in the procurement process you find important for supplier performance, where 25% considered it to be sourcing, 75% management. Yeah, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, so it usually happens to be like this, and it's very, very important. But there is another approach to the performance performance in the procurement process. The strategic approach would be that planning, sourcing, and management are each important stages in the improvement of performance of the suppliers. Most value is being added actually in the planning phase and in the management phase than in the sourcing phase. So actually planning the procurement process correctly, selecting the proper criteria, defining the business objectives and our needs is actually the first and very important stage of improving our supplier performance, because we then clarify what we actually expect from them, what we need them to do. Sourcing, yes, it's important. We need the supplier that can actually deliver what we have asked for, but the preparation in order to deliver something, this is very, very important for improving supplier performance, because then we know actually what we're looking for. And very good, and the responses in the poll have shown that it's very known, and the participants are aware of this importance. It's the management phase, because at that moment of contracting, there was no value delivered by our supplier. And it's very important and very correct indeed that the contract and the supplier relationship management is an important step in an important part in improving our supplier performance in our activity. So very good, but actually every step and planning would be very important to take into account, because usually in traditional approach, in the traditional procurement process, planning is not really considered very, very proper. So focus on the planning is also to be included in this part. Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting to see your thought about this. Okay, we'll go now to the next topic that we want to discuss about. We want to show and discuss very shortly key action and tools that we can use in supplier performance management. So the key actions that we can actually use in order to implement or develop a supplier performance management system, just briefly, what we will see today. First step would be supplier segmentation, so to map the supplier against profitability and the risk exposure. Supplier strategy development, to distribute internal resources and plans to meet business needs. And then the supplier strategy execution, so the use of performance management tools in order to actually implement the strategy that we have developed. The first step, the supplier segmentation, can be done easily with the supplier segmentation quadrant. This is very important because we have to see what is the impact of what is the impact of our supplier and of the goods that we actually buy and procure on our activity. How high is the risk and how it will be influencing the profit. So if we're talking about standard goods with low expensive or we have multiple procurement sources, then it's actually one part that we shouldn't really concentrate on in a supplier relationship management system. But if we have actually high expensive, when we have commodities, high expensive, lower cost of renewal, we have short delivery times and high volumes, then we actually should consider about thinking means of developing a supplier performance system with this kind of suppliers. The key suppliers are the ones that we have low spend with, but there are very specific products and they actually are technically complex, high cost per item, maybe lower volumes, and we cannot really find very many alternatives to this supplier. And then we can define suppliers that go into the strategic quadrant with high expenses, less sources of procurement, long delivery times, or performance critic features, and these ones we should be the one that we focus on. So the first step in the supplier performance management system would be the one to classify our suppliers based on risk and our profit, risk impact on our organization or the profit. And this, the supplier segmentation quadrant will be a good tool in order to do so. The second step would be then to define the supplier performance strategy. It's important to define the strategy, setting our objective. These are the main parts in order to make the improvement, to start the improvement of our supplier performance. And then going through the scorecard design, the KPI setting, a result analysis, and then define a set of actions in order to improve it. It's a complete process, defining the strategy of the approach to our suppliers in order to improve their performance. But very important is the fact that this supplier performance strategy has to be aligned with the company strategy. So this is the main key and should always be in focus. And then the implementation of the strategy can be done with a very good tool, which is the performance scorecard. So the performance scorecard will be the instrument that can help us implement the strategy that we have developed for the supplier performance system. We'll have here the objectives that we have set, and then we will use for cost and price, service or goods quality, delivery terms, or for innovation, communication, and growth. This is a balanced scorecard approach. And this tool will be very effective in order to improve our supplier performance. The performance of our suppliers. So this would be the three main key action and instruments in order to improve our supplier performances. So the benefits of implementing supplier performance system should then be actually pretty clear, let's say so, or would be easily to understand. As we started with the first topic, it's critical for the core business. If we have suppliers that perform well, it's very important for our business. It's critical also to the development of our business or to the core competencies that we have and to support our competitive advantages. And it significantly reduces risk to business when we actually talk about when we can improve our suppliers' performance system. So in order to do so, it's very important to build and develop strategic partnerships with our suppliers. There was a poll at that time, and the question was, what do you consider to be the biggest risk in ongoing collaboration with a trading partner? And most of the participants actually recognized that damaged reputation is the biggest risk that poor performance of a supplier can actually bring to a company. So it's very important to acknowledge the importance of our suppliers' performance. Because usually in typical collaboration, mainly we exchange operational data with our suppliers, demand and supply forecast, maybe our strategy, operational data, SKUs, real-time performance metrics, and financial targets, but not the very important elements of the supplier performance system. What could be the results when we actually implement the supplier performance system? We can provide standardized tools and templates which allow us actually to streamline our supplier relationship management. We can enable supplier relationship data management because we will have a single source of data. We can offer a common and consistent repository of our information, supplier information, and status of current relational activities. And this would also reduce the risk of data loss through secure storage and maintenance. And the other element would the result would be the enabling of relationship visibility. It is very important that visibility is offered to our supplier in order to improve their performance, because relevant information can allow staff to easily manage and audit also the activities of our suppliers. And this can be done proactively if we enable data visibility with our suppliers. Let's see some examples from the practice from in regards to the benefits of supplier relationship management. For example, some microsystem enterprises, they reported improvements in repair parts vendor turnaround times from 34 to 40 days to 4 to 5 days after they fully integrated its technology platform and systems with those of 12 of its key vendors in Americas. So the most important part was the integration of the platform, and this had a huge impact on the repair parts and vendor turnaround times. So from 34 to 4 or 5 days. It took, maybe 12 years, but it was very important for their development. Or another example would be from the private jet producer Cessna, that they reported 100% increase in production inventory turns over 6 years with dramatically higher material availability. They achieved this improvement by creating a strategic plan, and they had cross-functional commodity teams that rationalized the company's supplier base. So they actually developed a tool that aligns the supplier strategy with the one of Cessna. The integration of their strategy, of their company, with the one of the suppliers are key were the methods that have had as result these key benefits for Cessna company. So two examples of positive impact that supplier performance system have result. So drivers for the supplier performance system, the key drivers are actually the collaboration and data sharing. If the cooperation is possible and is enhanced and is implemented with the suppliers, then their performance will definitely improve, and the impact will be huge on our organization and our competitive advantage. Data sharing is actually crucial in order to improve performance with our suppliers. So in order to do so, to review a little bit, it's very important to develop a clear strategy and governance in supplier performance. Create strategic alliances, make this partnership with your key suppliers after reviewing their performances. Constant monitor the performance. Shape your supplier relationship with performance management tools and metrics, you've seen. To select a supplier base on your business needs and develop internal supplier management capabilities. So this would be most important drivers in order to achieve performance in supplier management. As a short review of the webinar today, what we can do in order to improve supplier performance, we should start with analyzing the company's strategic objectives and competitive advantage. We have to determine how critical the goods and services are to the company in order to define the proper approach for them. We have to demonstrate how these goods and services will successfully deliver against the business objectives, develop the supplier performance strategy and then implementation, and establish the key techniques and tools that can enable supplier performance.
Thank you very much, Christina, for your presentation. And now we'll begin the Q&A session, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them now. Well, there seem to be no questions, but if you have any queries whatsoever, you can write them down and Christina will be able to answer after the webinar by email. Right now, Christina, do you have any last words for our listeners?
I want to thank you all the participants that joined the webinar today, and I hope the insights that you had on performance management in supplier relationship was going to be useful and help you in developing your activity in the organization. Thank you very much for participating.
And thank you once more for your presentation. The KPI Institute appreciates your interest in the webinar Performance Management in Supplier Relationship. Follow our websites and our social media channels to find out more details and to subscribe to our next webinar, Strategic Planning Audit, which will be held by Aline Shonda. Also, if you are interested in getting a certification granted by the KPI Institute on vital areas within the performance management discipline, you can explore our scheduled courses on marketplace.kpiinstitute.org. Thank you again for your participation and have a nice day.